Hello and welcome to my channel, The Way What is Truth. Now, I did a video recently on Arnott Park, local to me where I live, and I did a longer video where I was talking about, or rather thinking about, going into some kind of evangelistic work, and also I did a short video where I found this book, and at the time it was wet through, absolutely sodden it was, and at first I was going to leave it on the bench, but then I thought to myself, if I leave it there and it starts raining again, then the book will get ruined and perhaps God wanted me to have it. So it's written by a chap called Philip Yancey. I've got no idea whether or not the guy is still alive. Feel free to look him up, and if you find out anything about this author, then leave it down below in the comments section. And it's all about God's grace. Now, let this video be a reminder to all of us that we are all under grace. Not one of us has the right to judge anybody else, no matter how bad somebody's crimes have been or what they have done to our family members or friends. I mean, imagine that. Us Christians are not supposed to judge anybody, no matter what they've done. All judgment is with Jesus, not with us. And we're not only are we supposed to not judge anybody, we are supposed to love and forgive. Now, I've said it in previous videos and I'm going to say it again. There's nothing simple about loving people and forgiving them. And the worse the sin is that somebody has committed, the harder it is to love and forgive, right? So we need to have humility about this and pray about this for God to give us the grace and the wisdom and the love and forgiveness to be able to stand back and say, okay, this person's done something bad. It doesn't have to be something terrible or catastrophic, but it could be anything bad that's happened to us, to other people, family members. We need to learn to be more gracious and loving and forgiving towards one another, and that's not easy. And God, of course, is full of grace, and that's how we're supposed to be: gracious, forgiving, loving, understanding, non-judgmental. Nobody has seen anybody's childhoods or what they've had to go through growing up or their influences throughout their lives and everything they've been through. Only God can read our hearts and minds. You get the idea. None of us really have the right. Only the one who bled for the sins of mankind, and that's Jesus. He's the only one who can judge. Anyway, I'm going to read the back of this book, and then I'm going to read the first chapter. Okay? There is nothing we can do to make God love us more. There is nothing we can do to make God love us less. Nobody can earn salvation. It's only by grace and belief in Jesus as our personal Lord and Saviour that anyone gets saved. Okay? We speak of grace often, but do we understand it? And more important, do we truly believe in it? And do our lives proclaim it as powerfully as our words? In What's So Amazing About Grace, the best-selling author of The Jesus I Never Knew gives us a probing and impassioned look at grace, what it looks like, what it doesn't look like, and why only Christians can and must reveal the grace the world is searching for. Philip Yancey offers compelling, true portraits of grace's life-changing power. He searches for the presence of grace in his own life and in the church. He asks, how can Christians contend graciously with moral issues that threaten all they hold dear? And he challenges us to become living answers to a world that desperately wants to know what's so amazing about grace. And there's a chap called Dr. Robert A. Seipel here. Again, I don't know if he's still alive either. He obviously has a doctorate qualification in something, and he's the president of World Vision, it says here. And this is what he says about the book. This is beyond a doubt the very best book I've read from a Christian author in my life. There's a lot of great books written by Christian authors. At a time when the actions of Christians holding extreme positions can inoculate many against the gospel, turn people away from the gospel, in other words, and the claims of Christ, Philip draws us back to the gift of grace. That's what it's all about. Now imagine this, that no matter how high or low our IQs are, no matter what education, both formal and informal, that we have had, no matter how clever we are or ignorant, no matter how wise we are, sin is something we are born into. It's a condition. It's a condition. That's why we need the grace and love and forgiveness of the Lord Jesus Christ. Isn't that incredible? Just take a few moments to think about this. No matter who we are, no matter how much of a success we are in this life, no matter what qualifications or accolades or fame or infamy perhaps that we have in this life, no matter who we are or what we've achieved or what we haven't achieved, we are all under grace. The only way anyone gets saved is through Jesus. So just take a moment to allow that to humble you a little bit. I'm not going to read the acknowledgements, I'm just going to read the first chapter. And yes, I've held on to the wet bookmark here. It's not in great shape. Isaiah 35 verses 3 to 4 is written here. Is written there. Anyway, I know nothing except what everyone knows. If we're grace, sorry, let me read that again. I know nothing except what everyone knows. If there when grace dances, I should dance. W.H. Auden, a quote from him. I can only assume he's an author or something. Chapter 1, the last best word. I told a story in my book, The Jesus I Never Knew, a true story, that long afterward continued to haunt me. I heard it from a friend who works with the down and outs in Chicago. A prostitute came to me in wretched straits, homeless, sick, unable to buy food for her 2-year-old daughter. Through sobs and tears, she told me she had been renting out her daughter, 2 years old, to men interested in kinky sex. Oh, this is horrendous. My word. She made more renting out her daughter for an hour than she could earn on her own in a night. She had to do it, she said, to support her own drug habit. I could hardly bear hearing her sordid story. I feel the same way. For one thing, it made me legally liable. I'm required to report cases of child abuse. I had no idea what to say to this woman. At last, I asked if she had ever thought of going to a church for help. I will never forget the look of pure naive shock that crossed her face. Church, she cried. Why would I ever go there? I was already feeling terrible about myself. They'll just make me feel even worse. What struck me about my friend's story is that women, much like this prostitute, fled toward Jesus, not away from him. The worse a person felt about herself, the more likely she saw Jesus as a refuge. Has the church lost that gift? Evidently, the down and out who flocked to Jesus when he lived on earth no longer feel welcome among his followers. What has happened? ? The more I pondered this question, the more I felt drawn to one word as the key. All that follows uncoils from that one word. As a writer, I play with words all day long. I toy with them, listen for their overtones, crack them open, and try to stuff my thoughts inside. I found that words tend to spoil over the years like old meat. Their meaning rots away. Consider the word charity, for instance. When King James translators contemplated the highest form of love, they settled on the word charity to convey it. Nowadays, we hear the scornful protest, I don't want your charity. Perhaps I keep circling back to grace because it is one grand theological word that has not spoiled. I call it the last best word because every English usage I can find retains some of the glory of the original. Like a vast aquifer, the word underlies our proud civilization, reminding us that good things come not from our own efforts, rather by the grace of God. Even now, despite our secular drift, taproots still stretch toward grace. Listen to how we use the word. Many people say grace before meals, acknowledging daily bread as a gift from God. We are grateful for someone's kindness, gratified by good news, congratulated when successful, gracious in hosting friends. When a person's service pleases us, we leave a gratuity. In each of these uses I hear a pang of childlike delight in the undeserved. A composer of music may add grace notes to the score, though not essential to the melody, they are gratuitous. These notes add a flourish whose presence would be missed. When I first attempted a piano sonata by Beethoven or Schubert, I play it through a few times without the grace notes. The sonata carries along, but oh, what a difference it makes when I'm able to add in the grace notes, which season the piece like savoury spices. In England, some uses hint loudly at the word's theological source. British subjects address royalty as Your Grace. Students at Oxford and Cambridge may receive grace, exempting them from certain academic requirements. Parliament declares an act of grace to pardon a criminal. New York publishers also suggest the theological meaning with their policy of gracing. If I sign up for 12 issues of a magazine, I may receive a few extra copies even after my subscription has expired. These are grace issues sent free of charge or gratis to tempt me to resubscribe. Credit cards, rental car agencies and mortgage companies likewise extend to customers an undeserved grace period. I also learn about a word from its opposite. Newspapers speak of communism's fall from grace, a phrase similarly applied to Jimmy Swaggart, Richard Nixon and O.J. Simpson. We insult a person by pointing out the dearth of grace. You ingrate, we say, or worse, you're a disgrace. A truly despicable person has no saving grace about him. My favourite use of the root word grace occurs in the mellifluous phrase persona non grata. A person who offends the US government by some act of treachery is officially proclaimed a person without grace. The many uses of the word in English convinces me that grace is indeed amazing, truly our last best word. It contains the essence of the gospel as a drop of water can contain the image of the sun. The world thirsts for grace in ways it does not even recognise. Little wonder the hymn Amazing Grace edged its way onto the top 10 charts 200 years after composition. Do you know something? I had no idea that song Amazing Grace was over 200 years old. For a society that seems adrift without moorings, I know of no better place to drop an anchor of faith. And we are all adrift. Most people are far adrift from God. Like grace notes in music, though, the state of grace proves fleeting. The Berlin Walls falls in a night of euphoria. South African blacks queue up in long, exuberant lines to cast their first votes ever. Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat shake hands in the Rose Garden for a moment. Grace descends, and then Eastern Europe suddenly settles into the long task of rebuilding. South Africa tries to figure out how to run a country. Arafat dodges bullets, and Rabin, or is it Rabin, is felled by one. Like a dying star, grace dissipates in a final burst of pale light and is then engulfed by the black hole of ungrace. The great Christian revolution, said H. Richard Niebuhr, come not by the discovery of something that was not known before. They happen when somebody takes radically something that was always there. Oddly, I sometimes find a shortage of grace within the church, an institution founded to proclaim, in Paul's phrase, the gospel of God's grace. Author Stephen Brown, or is that Stephen? I think it's Stephen Brown, notes that a veterinarian can learn a lot about a dog owner he has never met just by observing the dog. What does the world learn about God by watching us, his followers on earth? Trace the roots of grace, or charis in Greek, and you will find a verb that means I rejoice, I am glad. In my experience, rejoicing and gladness are not the first images that come to mind when people think of the church. They think of a holier than vows. Indeed, how many of us Christians have become so uppity and self-righteous and unable to have empathy and relate and put ourselves in other people's shoes? And this, of course, applies to atheists too. Both atheists, agnostics, Christians, everybody on earth can be guilty of self-righteousness and being judgmental. It applies to everybody. It's a universal thing. They think of church as a place to go after you have cleaned up your act, not before. They think of morality, not grace. Church, said the prostitute, Why would I ever go there? I was already feeling terrible about myself. They'll just make me feel worse. And this still very much applies today, perhaps even more so. Such an attitude comes partly from a misconception or bias by outsiders. I have visited soup kitchens, homeless shelters, hospices, and prisons, and prison ministries, staffed by Christian volunteers generous with grace. And yet the prostitute's comment stings because she has found a weak spot in the church. Some of us seem so anxious about avoiding hell that we forget to celebrate our journey toward heaven. Others of us, rightly concerned about issues in a modern culture war, neglect the church's mission as a haven of grace in this world of ungrace. Grace is everywhere, said the dying priest in Georges Bonanno's novel, Diary of a Country Priest. Yes, but how easily we pass by death to the euphony. I attended a Bible college. Years later, when I was sitting next to the president of that school on an airplane, he asked me to assess my education. Some good, some bad, I replied. I met many godly people there. In fact, I met God there. Who can place a value on that? And yet, I later realised that in 4 years I learned almost nothing about grace. It may be the most important word in the Bible, the heart of the gospel. How could I have missed it? I related our conversation in a subsequent chapel address and, in doing so, offended the faculty. Some suggested I not be invited back to speak. One gentle soul wrote to ask whether I should have phrased things differently. Shouldn't I have said that as a student I lacked the receptors to receive the grace that was all around me? Because I respect and love this man, I thought long and hard about his question. Ultimately, however, I concluded that I had experienced as much ungrace on the campus of a Bible college as I had anywhere else in life. A counsellor, David Siemens, summed up his career this way. Many years ago, I was driven to the conclusion that the two major causes of most emotional problems among evangelical Christians are these: the failure to understand, receive, and live out God's unconditional grace and forgiveness, and the failure to give out that unconditional love, forgiveness, and grace to other people. We read, we hear, we believe a good theology of grace, but that's not the way we live. The good news of the gospel of grace has not penetrated the level of our emotions. The world can do almost anything as well or better than the church, says Gordon MacDonald. You need not be a Christian to build houses, feed the hungry, or heal the sick. There is only one thing the world cannot do. It cannot offer grace. MacDonald has put his finger on the church's single most important contribution. Where else can the world go to find grace? The Italian novelist Ignazio Silone wrote about a revolutionary hunted by the police. In order to hide him, his comrades dressed him in the garb of a priest and sent him to a remote village in the foothills of the Alps. Word got out, and soon a long line of peasants appeared at his door, full of stories of their sins and broken lives. The priest protested and tried to turn them away, to no avail. He had no recourse but to sit and listen to the stories of people starving for grace. I sense, in fact, that is why any person goes to church out of hunger for grace. The book Growing Up Fundamentalist tells of a reunion of students from a missionary academy in Japan. With one or two exceptions, all had left the faith and come back. One of the students reported, and those of us who had come back had one thing in common: we had all discovered grace. That's what it's all about, God's forgiveness. As I look back on my own pilgrimage, marked by wanderings, detours, and dead ends, I see now that what pulled me along was my search for grace. I rejected the church for a time because I found so little grace there. I returned because I found grace nowhere else. I have barely tasted of grace myself, have rendered less than I have received, and am in no wise an expert on grace. These are, in fact, the very reasons that impel me to write. I want to know more, to understand more, to experience more grace. I dare not, and the danger is very real, writes an ungracious book about grace, except then, here at the beginning, that I write as a pilgrim, qualified only by my craving for grace. Grace does not offer an easy subject for a writer. To borrow E.B. White's comment about humour, grace can be dissected as a frog, but the thing dies in the process, and the innards are discouraging to any but the pure scientific mind. I've just read a 13-page treatise on grace in the New Catholic Encyclopedia, which has cured me of any desire to dissect grace and display its innards. I do not want the thing to die. For this reason, I will rely more on stories than on... I can't pronounce that. Syllogisms? Let me do a close-up of that word I can't pronounce. And yeah, it's right there, look. In sum, I would far rather convey grace than explain it. I haven't done a video this long for a while, 20 minutes. For some bizarre reason, I thought it would be between 5 and 10, but it takes time to read an entire chapter, even if it's just a few pages. Well, it was, how many pages? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I hope and pray that you're all well. Again, leave comments down below and let's all reflect on grace. And what a horrendous story that was. But I believe that woman was in all probability forgiven for what she did between her and her young daughter. I mean, I just couldn't believe it when I first started reading it. I thought, wow, I didn't think the first chapter would be about something like this. But I will endeavour to read the whole book, and I may even do another video telling you what I think to it, and I may give it a recommendation, although from what I've read so far, I recommend it wholeheartedly from what I've seen of it so far. Okay, so if you've got anything to say about God's grace, mercy and forgiveness, perhaps you can talk to me about whether or not you feel forgiven. Do you have doubts about your salvation sometimes? Perhaps you don't understand God's grace and mercy and forgiveness as well as you would like to. There's a lot to talk about here and to pray about. So, bye-bye and God bless.